Good afternoon, diverse minds. Thank you for coming together this afternoon to explore the synergy and powerful connection between team building and a diverse workforce. I'm Kelly Anthony, BISC's Manager of Communication and Engagement, and thrilled to be moderating this terrific session with two of my remarkable colleagues, Dr. Brenda Barabee and Dr. Jennifer King. Their wealth of experience and expertise will immerse you into the magic of team building that transcends trust falls and icebreakers and gets to the heart of what truly elevates the exceptional potential of a diverse workforce. They will uncover how individuals from diverse backgrounds can unite, not just as colleagues, but as a unified team. So whether you're a team leader, a member of a diverse workforce, or someone passionate about promoting inclusivity and collaboration, this session has something to offer you. We encourage you to ask questions, actively engage, spoiler alert, we have a poll coming up for you to take, and share your thoughts and insights during and following this session, as we'll offer multiple opportunities for you to connect and become part of our network. So let's dive in. Dr. Brenda Barabee, holds the position of Director of Workforce and Education at BISC. In her position, Dr. Barabee supports BISC's corporate clients by assisting talent development leaders in crafting meaningful learning opportunities from our partner university programs with workforce needs. She's a highly accomplished thought leader with a deep passion for education, workforce development, and STEM. Her expertise has led her to becoming a featured speaker at a TEDx event focusing on STEM education. She's played a pivotal role as the founding chair of the STEM department at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and as a member of the Massachusetts Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Dr. Barabee earned her Doctor of Education in Leadership, an Education Specialist degree in Educational Leadership, a Master of Science in Biomedical Technology and Management, and an undergraduate degree in biology. Dr. Jennifer King holds the role of Vice President of Workforce Education at BISC and leads initiatives related to academic business development. She strategizes with BISC's university partners to align academic opportunities with workforce needs. Dr. King is a formerly tenured professor, academic, dean, and author, celebrating 30 years in the education industry, 26 of which have been in higher ed. Dr. King earned her PhD in Instructional Technology and Educational Tests and Measurements from the University of South Florida College of Education, along with an undergraduate degree from New York University. Her doctoral work has positioned her as a prominent thought leader in online and remote instruction and learning. The collective talents of both Dr. Barabee and Dr. King position BISC as a strong supportive partner in both the workforce and education space. And Dr. King, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelly, for that introduction. And first, I also want to thank Cyversity for this great opportunity to share. And I thank Cyversity as a partner with BISC in cybersecurity, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I thought I would start off, though, because many of you may not know who BISC is. So we could go to the next slide. And I'd prepare a brief overview for you about BISC and what we do. We like to actually call ourselves Tampa's homegrown educational technology company. We were actually founded in 1971, 52 years ago, by Nathan Bisk, who can actually be considered as the grandfather of distance education. He created distance ed before it was even cool and sexy to call it online. So we're proud of our heritage. We're proud of Nathan. His son now is the CEO, Mike Bisk. In 1996, though, Nathan and Bisk launched the first online MBA with Regis University. And since 1971, we've launched close to 2,000 courses. We've managed over 200 distinct degree programs, master's degrees, bachelor's, associates, as well as certificate offerings. We're right now in 2023 approaching close to 2 million enrollments across our university partners, some of which are displayed on the screen at the bottom. Broadly, though, BISC offers bundled and menu-based services, and these are our services. learning experience, or instructional design. And I'm on site at BIS today. We have a production studio right down the hall. We also have student success services and student advisory services. We specialize in marketing and market research. And this year, we launched a new product called Amplified, which Brenda and I are going to talk to you about a little later. But not shown on this slide are the many, many corporate partners that we engage with, businesses and companies and organizations, probably like where you're coming from. We provide educational opportunities for employees looking to start a college degree or maybe complete a certificate. And we also can create custom training courses, which we call micro-credentials, for upskilling and reskilling the employees in your network. So that's who BISC is. Look us up at bisc.com. You can reach out to us also via LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you. And let's move on now to the purpose of our presentation. Today's webinar, the title, and you can go to the next slide. The title, as you saw on the title slide, is about professional vulnerability, okay? And as a guest of Cyversity and in the spirit of cybersecurity, we want to discuss vulnerability, but not from really the perspective that you're familiar with cyber, but really from the perspective of what Brenda and I call professional vulnerability. In the realm of cyber, we conduct penetration tests and vulnerability scans of our networks. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is solid, that our data and our employees are safe from security breaches and cyber criminals. And we do this vulnerability scanning all the time, or we should be. There's another type of vulnerability that we need to keep in mind that is probably more personal or professional in nature, and that's what we're calling professional vulnerability. Aristotle said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." But the problem is that when we do not know ourselves, right, our communication styles, our learning preferences, without this personal knowledge, this professional knowledge, we lead our teams from a comfort of our ignorance in our preferences. So the immediate impact is that we tend to recruit people that look just like us, right? If we don't know who we are, we recruit people that think like us or agree with us. And while, diversity, equity, inclusion is supremely important, often our most implicit and explicit biases will not really be based on race or gender or sexual orientation or political orientation, but really the biases that come from our learning preference. And that impact trickles down to our teammates. Our teams have misunderstandings. Our dialogue is impacted amongst our teams. Teams are left with ambiguity, and they're often posed with more unanswered questions than answered questions. There's typically a loss of team buy-in and team engagement. And when this all blows up, because it will, the biggest impact to not knowing your learning preferences is that people work in silos. So in a moment, Brenda's going to literally break down a method, a system for you, which is called FORMAT, the FORMAT system. It's a method for determining our learning preferences. And we'll discuss these solutions as follows. Number one, how to diversify communication by knowing your learning preference. Two, how do we deliver on intentional engagement by knowing the preference of our teammates? Number three, how do we consider our preferences when we seek new opportunities for professional growth? And then finally, how do we align on educational opportunities and learning experiences based on our preferences? So there you have it. We're going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to hand it over to Brenda.
Thanks, Jen. I first want to share with you that we're using the approach of the Bernice McCarthy format method. There's many other methods that we could use and apply to understanding differences in learning styles, learning preferences, diversity in communication, and the way in which we think, feel, perceived, and act within the world. Bernice McCarthy was initially an educator. She started in 1978, really looking at the different ways in which students were learning and thinking in her classroom. And she wanted to make sure that she had a true understanding of all of her students and was able to come up with a way to bring meaningful education opportunities to her students. And Bernice McCarthy shares her story and how she started in a doctoral program. And there was a small scholarship grant opening that was sponsored by McDonald's. And she was told, you know what, write a grant and see if you can get the top thinkers on the way in which we teach and learn and make meaning to differences and different ways in which we communicate with each other. She shares the story that she applied for the grant in October. She had 3 weeks to write it, and by December, she had the top thinkers and researchers in the country meet in a small hotel for 3 days in Chicago. And with that, she was able to capture meaningful notes that it took her approximately 7 months to go through and analyze each one of the suggestions on the ways in which we can come up with a best practice for truly understanding the diversity that exists in our learning, in our workplace, and how we communicate. And what she did with that paper, she shares that she actually turned her pages to the side and she opened a notebook, and on the left side, she would make diagrams, and on the right side, she would write the meanings. And the reason why is because she wanted to make sure that her research was be able to embrace everyone and that everyone could understand what her work was trying to, share and impact for true learning preference acknowledgement. And what she came up with was based upon left and right brain learning, also based upon the way in which we think, feel, act, and do. And she was able to break them into these 4 different quadrants referred to as a format style. And I'm going to talk you through each one of them. But really, it's, as Jen shared, it's a difference in our learning preference. It's a difference in the way in which we communicate. We all should acknowledge that there's differences and have intentional practices when we communicate with others. And the big questions that we first embrace is why, what, how, and what if. So depending upon your learning preference, you would first want to acknowledge your question and make sure that your question was recognized. So this way you can then move on with the task. Jen, can you jump in or switch to the next slide? Thanks. So the first type 1. Type 1 asks why. Why is this important to me? I need to make meaning to it. I need to understand how this makes me feel or makes others feel. What were they thinking? So for example, in the cyberspace, you have to jump in and think, what was that hacker thinking? Or why were they trying to get me to trigger, to take an action, to make me vulnerable? The type 1 learner or the type 1 preference in a team really likes to stop for a moment, reflect, think about what it is that you're working on in the project before moving on to the approach. They like to talk out the ideas. They like to make sure that they're connecting with others that are part of the team and really paying attention to the intentionality in each one of the actions before moving on with a project. Can you go to the next slide? The type 2 learners are what? What do I need to know? What are the experts saying? What information already exists? How can I take this information, analyze it, research it, learn from it before I move on with the project? Really capturing what data analysis is out there, what information's out there, and then coming up with a strategic plan to be able to take action with the rest of the members of the team. So if you think about it, you have a type 1 that needs to acknowledge, why are we doing this? The type 2 is saying, what are we doing? What are we analyzing? Can we move on to the next one? The type 3 is how. How are we going to do this? What problem are we going to solve? How can we move forward? How can we practice to make sure that we're being able to replicate it, that it's sustainable, that we can take it and share it with others? How can we take this action and, share it out to the others in the cyberspace so it doesn't happen again? Really focusing on the action, hands-on. Let's jump in. Let's see what exists. Let's figure it out. And then we can move forward with the rest of the project. So again, a type 1 is asking why. A type 2 is saying what already exists. but the type 3 is ready to jump in on the project and how can we tackle it? How can we move forward? The next slide. The type 4 says, what if? They're the big thinker. What if we take this action? What if we explore this? How can we take what's already out there, but what if we change it? What if it influences other things before we move forward? So the what ifs really like to think big picture, macroscopic analysis, system thinkers. And all 4 are very significant. All 4 bring meaning to a project. However, all 4 of them are going to communicate their ideas differently within the group. So we really want to have a strong conversation now on how it's important within your team that you have all learning preferences, that you have your type 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, acknowledging those differences and really being able to take the differences and embrace them to then empower the entire team.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide.
Mm-hmm.
With this intentionality, really knowing what type of learner you have next to you, you can move faster in a group. So for example, I will self-report, I'm a 2 and a 3. I like to jump in, look at the information, see what we currently have, make an analysis on it, and then write my strategic plan, how we're going to move forward to be able to bring it to the next level. Jen?
Brenda, describe me. It's more fun when you describe me.
Yeah. What's wonderful about Jen is a 1 and a 4. Jen is, slows me down and says, Brenda, but why are we doing this? Why are we capturing this data? What if we take this data and apply it this way? What if we take this data and take something that currently exists, but then bring it onto a new project? And so the strength of both our partnership here at BISC is really acknowledging our strengths individual and taking those individual strengths and not slowing down with it. I have no problem at all stopping and saying, I have this data. I'm not sure what to do with it. Bring Jen in. Jen, I have this data. What do you think about it? She will then look at the why, and we're able to move quickly and effectively and then communicate to then come up with a strategic plan and be able to employ it very quickly. Jen, do you want to add?
I do. Real quick before we move on, that's what we call delivering on intentional engagement, right? Because you have to know the preferences of yourself and your team members in order to be intentional about how to engage them in the workplace, in the project as a team. Imagine if you were a team of 1s. You would always be in the why and you would never get down to action and details. But if you were a team of 2s and 3s, you're always in the details. You're always in the weeds, right? And you aren't thinking outside the box. You're not thinking about the next thing coming. So we tend to, like I said at the beginning, we tend to recruit out of our ignorance of our preference. And I like 1 and 4. I am a 1 and 4. I prefer that. I will tend to recruit 1 and 4s, but I don't need more 1 and 4s. I need more 2s and 3s. And so that is being intentional about your preferences. So let's go to the next slide. And I think this is where we want to hear from you. We would like you, it's not so much a poll, but we want you to use the chat and specify what you think you are. Are you a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4? And remember, as you share your comments, and we're going to have Kelly, who is our moderator, she's going to keep an eye on what's coming through. Remember that these are preferences. This is not a process. Sometimes people think, well, I'm a 1, and then I get through the project, and then I become a 2, and then I get a little deeper in the project, and then I become a 3, and then I become a 4. That's not how this works. This is a preference of, this is the way I approach my work. This is how I approach my team. This is how I approach my data, my project. It is a preference, and it's something that you were born with. Okay. So as we see those coming through, we will point those out as we get your comments. And here's Kelly.
They're starting to roll in. So like Jen asked, use that comment, tell us what type you are. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and then let's give it another minute or so if you guys want to keep moving on, and we can come back to it.
Definitely. Let's go to the next slide. Keep sharing your comments. And this is where Brenda will pick up from here.
Sure. And again, going back to that title of this conversation, professional vulnerability, it's important that you have an authentic set of relationships within that team, because I'll be honest, Jen will say, Brenda, you got enough data. Let's go. Keep going. Brenda, stop finding more information to validate your idea. We're good. We trust that this is an idea. Let's move forward. Let's continue on. So again, that professional vulnerability is something that you can then share with your team. So this way they can then help you move forward and be more productive in the team to say, let's keep going. We're doing well here. We got the idea. Okay, we got the big picture, but that big picture, we need to have relevancy. So just wanted to share that we all have a gap in our strengths of what we need to do to be a productive team member. And the second part of the title is called Workforce Education Alignment. And this is the best part of what we do, is we listen to individuals and we listen to corporate learning needs, and we're listening to what they're sharing they need for their team or to take their projects to the next level. And with that, we want to make sure that we're providing that meaningful education opportunity. So I just want to share with you some examples of these educational opportunities that you see that's available. I'm sure many of you have heard of the term boot camp or certification. Now we have the term micro-credential, and then of course degrees. Well, depending upon what you're looking for your workforce, you need to make sure that the learning opportunity is aligned with what you need. If you're just looking for a particular skill, if you realize within your team, we're lacking a specific skill or a fluency of a technical application, then you might want to check out a boot camp, because the boot camp is very fast paced. It will teach you the skill. It might be associated with an industry certification or a credential, but it's going to focus primarily on the how to do something. If you want to know not only how to do it, but also a bit of the conceptual understanding related to the skill, then you might want to look at a certificate. Certificates are a bit longer. They will have content knowledge associated with it. They might have real world examples that are tied into the skill. However, it goes to a little deeper level of conceptual understanding. And the third one is a micro-credential. A micro-credential is the breadcrumb or the next step moving from the certification to look for that potential degree or a stronger academic foundational knowledge. They will help with the troubleshooting, meaning you have the skill, you have conceptual understanding. However, they'll teach you of the what if, how to take that skill, take the concept, and possibly apply it to a new setting. Or again, being able to troubleshoot or take that professional knowledge and apply it to a new profession to gain entry into either broadening your opportunities. And the last one is the degree. If you're seeking something that you're looking at that has that strong foundational knowledge, the application to be able to troubleshoot, conceptualize it, and then apply it to different areas, and you really need to understand the why. Why is it that I need to know this? Why is it that it's working this way? So again, when you're looking at your own professional vulnerability or you're looking at that for your team, we're not just talking about the way in which you communicate and act internally within the team, but also looking at the next steps for yourself. And so we hope that by taking this Bernice McCarthy format method and being able to understand, first of all, your own learning preference and identify your own professional vulnerability or where you want to go within your own profession or to take your team, that you might also want to look at the education alignment associated with your next step in your learning opportunities. Mm-hmm. Jen, do you want to share an example?
Yes, thank you. Let's go to the next slide because we actually have a real world example. I bring this up also to just celebrate the partnership of BISC and Cyversity. Cyversity was very instrumental in being a supporter of what we called From Camp to Career. And just historically, I'll tell you in 2023, what you're seeing here on the slide is we partnered with Cyber Florida at the University of South Florida. And we also partnered with Florida A&M University, which is the nation's #1 public historically Black college and university. We launched a one-year project. It was a grant-funded project to the tune of $1.45 million. And we launched this, wrapped this up in August. And this is the components of that. But you'll notice if you look at the green arrow, it's a replica of what Brenda just spoke on. This is your real-world example. We launched with Florida A&M first 3 cybersecurity boot camps for the cyber defense analyst role. We also created 4 8-week certificate courses for undergraduates that were in the CIS program. Then the grant provided vouchers for the campers and the certificate completers to take the CompTIA Security Plus exam. Some of our campers were matched to internships and apprenticeships, which was a huge success. Cyversity offered and provided mentorship for our campers. Some of our campers also, and as well as our certificate completers, applied and were accepted into the cyber degree program. So you see, we were providing an educational opportunity using this grant funding to provide an opportunity for individuals to literally follow that career pathway and that college pathway from boot camp, certificate, credentialing, and degree. Let's go to the next slide. Because you'll remember what I said at the beginning, that if you don't know your learning preference, you're going to, recruit yourself. And the whole purpose of this project with Florida A&M and Cyber Florida was that we wanted to broaden the representation in the cyber workforce. We wanted to target historically underrepresented populations in cyber. Did you know that to date, and this is Cyversity, so you probably do know, that to date in 2023, Blacks, Hispanics, and Asians represent less than 12% of the cyber workforce. Less than 12%. Let's go to the next slide. Since 2020, women, let's talk about women. We, since 2020, have represented about 20% of the participation in cyber, to include about 20% of the C-suite positions in Fortune 500 companies. So we have a lot of room to grow amongst our underrepresented populations and our female participation in cyber. But the ironic thing is, while there's this underrepresentation, we still have 3.5 million unfilled cyber jobs in the United States. Can you imagine with that? Let's just think about that. Here we are talking about professional vulnerability and knowing yourself, targeting underrepresented populations, making sure we have a diverse team. And yet we still have so many unfilled positions in cybersecurity that we need to address that. Let's go to the next slide. With those unfilled positions, I'm happy to say that with this grant project, at least 66 individuals, 66 from our boot camps, are a little closer to filling those unfilled positions in cyber. And I'm really proud of this. And look at the stats here. In boot camp 1, and really across all of our boot camps, the highest participation in our boot camps, 67% were Black women. 40%, which was the majority of participants, held at least a bachelor's degree, okay? And many of them did not have bachelor's degrees in IT or CIS. They were coming from education and law and all kinds of things, medicine. But the age range in our participation was from 20 to 66 people. So our oldest participant in the boot camp was age 66. So in closing with this project, we want you to start thinking of how you and your company can also align on these educational opportunities. We can go to the next slide because now we want to make an invitation to you as a group to join the BISC Amplified Network. And here I'm going to toss it back to Brenda to talk a little bit about Amplified.
Sure. And I encourage all of you right now, either take a screenshot or take your phone and really look right underneath where it says join the Amplified Network. Here, because of the sponsorship with Cyversity, all of you can have access by joining the Amplified Network. And by joining that Amplified Network, you can fill in your contact information and share that with anyone within your corporate team. The corporate team can then have access to BISC leading universities, and you can share these opportunities to make meaningful decisions for your workforce education alignment. So what we're offering here is for you to join the BISC Amplified Network. By joining, you can go onto the network, share with your team, your company team leaders will have access to be able to look at a whole portfolio from our leading universities, and you can make meaningful decisions for your teams. If you're looking for specific degrees, certifications, a unique certification coming from a different university, you can go on, and I am more than happy to support you and help you in your decision making to make sure that you're not taking these education opportunities and, as Jen shared, making vulnerable decisions where you're selecting the same education opportunity that you have always wanted. I can share with you that I remember being at a university, and I had a graduate student come to me and saying, Professor Barabee, I am so upset because I can't get into your next class. And I said, you've already taken 3 classes on instrumentation automation. And they said, yeah, that's because I'm really good at it. And I said, if you're really good at something, why are you taking a class in something you're really good at? Why don't you take a class if you're paying and investing the time? Take something to address your gaps
Your
so you can
vulnerability.
grow. Right. And so I'll never forget that, because we always have that vulnerability. We always tend to tackle and take on the task of the first thing that we're really good at. Acknowledge, embrace your learning preference, ask specific questions so this way you're satisfied with your decision and your role within the team, and then move on, and then embrace the differences in others, and then work together. So I'm sharing with you now that you have this opportunity to look at many different universities with wonderful, impactful programs. However, you want to make sure you have that clear workforce professional education alignment.
Mhm. Very good. Let's move to the next slide. I think we're at a place where now we really want to hear from the audience. We want to hear from you. We need to get back to Kelly to find out what the audience is saying in terms of their learning preference. Are they 1, 2, 3s, and 4s, or what are the other comments out there?
Yeah, so a couple of responses, 2s and 3s primarily. So, and I will tell you, I'm after that list, after learning a little bit more, I'm a 1 and a 3. So, which is very eye-opening and fascinating, but some 2s and 3s out there. And I guess, again, everyone, if you have questions or some comments, put those in the comment sections, and we have time to address them. One question for you guys that I was thinking just about myself being more of a 1 and a 3, is there anything that I could do, or, aside from putting a lot of 2s and 4s around me, is there anything that I could do to kind of up the other learning preferences that I don't always, gravitate to?
I would love to answer that. And I'm not saying that I am right. I'm just telling you my opinion, okay? You are who you are, right? Be who you are. If you know you are a 1 and a 3, Kelly,
Mhm.
or you are a 1 and a 3 is what you said, right?
Yes.
Then own that. And you are exactly right. Surround yourself with 2s and 4s. Like, be you. I had an interesting conversation this morning with a teammate who, and as I said earlier, I'm a 1 and a 4. I'm kind of high level, big thinker, on to the next thing. This coworker wanted me to be in the weeds at the 2 and 3 level. And I really tried. I got in there. I was trying to focus. I was taking notes. I got my highlighter, trying to keep up. And then I realized, why am I doing this to myself? I'm trying to force myself to grasp and be something that I'm really not. You know what? I reached out to that teammate and I said, listen, you're asking me to do that. I'm actually going to turn it back on you. Will you partner with me and be my 2 and 3? I'll be your 1 and 4, but can you be my 2 and 3? Let's just own who we are and move forward, right? Brenda, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, and Kelly, that's a great question. And what I feel is, again, a vulnerability of a lot of us is we do not share with others what we're good at.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's okay to be like, I played basketball, I'm good at shooting. But when you say, I'm a good writer, let me help you write. I'm a really good thinker at this level. Let me help you. Being part of that authentic team is being willing to step up and share your talents with others. And your time will come. As Jen said, I can't do this. I got you back. I'll help you later on. But it's self-reporting and sharing what you're good at with others. So this way, everybody can embrace the diversity, and then being able to act efficiently and quickly to be able to move on with the best practice or what is in the best interest for the whole team. And also look for prompts. If you have somebody continually saying, I think, or, I think, or why, then you need to know that you will embrace them with a why. Answer their why first. So this way they're then satisfied to then move on to the next level. And we're sharing this as a professional practice, but this works for any type of communication, right?
Right.
Again, if it's, how are we going to do this? Or how are we going to get there? Or how are we going to do this? Okay. We're going to make sure that everybody is trained in CompTIA. And after they're trained in CompTIA, that's when we will then implement this new technology and go on to this level. So you embrace the how. So this way you can get on to that next level and then increase the iterative process to then move on to the next project. So self-reporting, embracing the diversity. And then the last part is listening for the prompts. And I've shared this with Jen before, that I heard a wonderful example from Oprah Winfrey, and she shared that in her over 30 years, she said that there was over probably 70,000 different people that she's communicated with, talked with, and asked questions to. And whether they were somebody on death row or whether they were a president, at the end of every time she interviewed them, they asked, how'd I do? How'd I do? And she realized that how'd I do really meant, did you hear me? And so we all have different learning preferences. By acknowledging and listening for those prompts, what you're doing is you're saying to that person, I hear you. I hear your ideas. I hear your input. I'm validating that you're contributing to the team. And then you embrace that difference. And then as a team, move on to the next project. So again, it's focusing on the strength of the diversity and the strengths of the talents that Jen said that we all need to make sure we're not vulnerable with, and keep surrounding ourselves with people that have the same talents.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, is there any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put up this last slide here, and we'll give me 1 second, guys. You know what, Caroline, it's not working on my end. You might have to put it back up. There we go. No, but that's helpful to know, ladies. Thank you very much for walking us through that. As you mentioned, and I think that last closing slide we can head over to, we need to fix that address up top. Caroline put it in the comments. We are going to follow up with everybody too following this webinar today. Guys, both of you have mentioned they can connect with you on LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn addresses or profiles are there. And again, we're going to send a follow-up to each participant today with further details about our programs and offer opportunities to connect with both Dr. Barabee and Dr. King. Do you have any final closing remarks from either one of you?
Yeah, I will start by just piggybacking on what Brenda said, where she noted we don't often tell people what our strengths are.
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is true also. We also aren't honest about what our weaknesses are. You know, for me to say I'm not a 2, and you're asking me to be a very detail thinker right now, being honest to say that's just not my strength. You know, if you're looking for someone that is a details person and detail driven, then you need to I introduce you to Dr. Brenda Barabee, because that's her strength, right? But if you're looking for someone that's a high level thinking, innovative, that's more of my strength, right? So being honest about what you are. And then I would say too, a takeaway is, if you noted that you are a 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? And you said this is my personal learning preference, I have a question back to the audience. Think about your supervisor. Think about your boss.
Mhm.
Think about your partner. Think about your spouse. Think about the person you spend the most time with, either at work or on a sports team in a sports league. Maybe it's the person that you find you're maybe like this a lot with, and ask yourself, I wonder what their preference is. I wonder what my partner's preference is, or my children's preferences are. How are their preferences impacting my communication and vice versa? So I would like, if anyone in the audience, or anyone here, Kelly or Brenda, wants to talk about that, please.
Mhm. And the important thing about that, Jen, is when we don't know what people's preferences are, whether it's our spoken word or what we write, or
Mhm.
again, used even in marketing, is you have to make sure that if you only have one shot to explain, or if you only have one visual representation, that that one moment that you are in fact hitting all four of the learning preferences. So
Mhm.
for example, it's used many times in marketing, where they will start off in a commercial or show something where somebody's driving in the car or they're walking through, and they're embracing that feeling or that personal connection to whatever the product is. They're hitting the type 1. But then they might tag along all the, manufacturer ratings of that product. They're addressing the type 2. They might show the person picking up the product or using it or driving in the car. How am I going to use this, or how is it going to change my life? That's a type 3. But then they might end with a big picture of, imagine if you had this, what perception it will do, or what impact it would make, or how it would change your organization. And that hits the type 4. So
That's
whether we're talking about it, whether we're writing about it, or whether we're presenting on it, we want to make sure that we're embracing the entire, population, embracing all of the diversified learners out there, embracing all of their talents and preferences. So when we don't have that answer and we don't know, then we need to be meaningful in the way in which we're speaking, presenting, and writing.
I love it.
I think it's just good awareness overall for everything that you do. And it's good for, just to be aware and be reminded of that, to that point, Brenda, of getting that whole big picture.
Mhm.
Mhm. Agree. But do not stand back and be like, oh, wait a minute. My sister, yeah, she's a 2, or this one's a 1. No, the idea,
It's
the
not
idea is
judgment.
to embrace the talents and
Yeah,
have conversations and let
Yeah,
them know I'm hearing you.
I'm hearing it's not a judgment.
right.
It's an engagement. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very well said.
Mhm.
Good. Again, your LinkedIn profiles are up on the screen there. Anybody can connect with you at any time. We will be sending a follow-up. We'll have all this information in there. And it's been a pleasure to have you on today's session. We look forward to further connecting with you, and we hope everyone has a nice weekend. It's almost here. Brenda, Jen, anything else? Otherwise, it's been good to
No,
have
just want to
everybody
say
today.
thank you so much and appreciate the opportunity that Cyversity has, really, empowered other people to acknowledge their diversity. And we're just really happy to be able to be a part of this presentation and share, just some tips. So this way we're all not professionally vulnerable, and make sure we make meaningful workforce education alignment with our learning opportunities.
Absolutely. And stay in touch with us. Find us on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm a voracious LinkedIn person. I would love to connect with
Yes.
you. So let's do so very quickly.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Dr.
you.
King,
Have a
Dr.
great day.
Barabee, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Thanks. And thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah. I can't believe there was a typo in there. And I think we just copied and pasted it onto the slide.
Yeah, I didn't see it. It just didn't catch my eye. So I fixed it on my end. I was trying to share it, but I'm on my laptop. I couldn't pull up the page.
Yeah.